Welcome to the Houston SecCon, 9:30. This talk is going to be from the theory to the plant floor, 3 customer journeys with remote privileged access management by Josh Martin.
Say your company. Ciolo. Ciolo.
Ciolo. And I'm going to get a little bit more light so I can read this. I'm going to go ahead with your introduction.
Yes.
Do you mind? Okay. From never security to security leader, Josh Martin once swore he'd never work in security until he did, bringing a unique perspective shaped by his journey across multiple functions in tech, cross-functional experience with nearly 5 years spanning support, product marketing, sales enablement, and sales engineering. Josh brings a 360-degree view to tackling complex cybersecurity challenges. Trusted advisor at
Ciolo.
Ciolo, thank you. As a senior solutions architect, Josh helps organizations design and implement secure remote access and identity-based zero trust strategies. Proven track record prior to
Ciolo.
Josh sharpened his skills at industry leaders including Zscaler, Duo Security, and Cisco. Welcome, Josh.
Awesome. Thank you. If anybody takes anything out of today, at least you know how to say our company's name, Ciolo. But awesome, thank you. Super happy to be here. This is my first HughesCon, so really thrilled. And today we kind of wanted to take a little bit of a different angle, just because there's going to be a lot of other vendors here, just a lot of tech thrown at you, and a lot of it's cool. But what I really wanted to do is share some more practical experiences of 3 of our largest customers who undertook this kind of very scary VPN, PAM replacement projects. How do we get to a new state of access for our OT environments and then also our IT environments using this kind of new market term of remote privileged access management, because we all love more acronyms, RPAM. Now, to kind of start, let's talk about what RPAM is, because this is fairly new. Gartner has just started to kind of carve it out. And typically, what's wrong with PAM? And for the longest time, PAM has really just been about credential vaulting, credential rotation for our admin accounts, and that's it. But ultimately, we're starting to need these same controls applied for all of our access, for all of our users, not just our quote-unquote privileged, because ultimately, every user is privileged in some way. So when we talk about RPAM as a whole, it's really these 3 key technology areas that build up RPAM. And we start with ZTNA, Zero Trust Access, starting with, and I could get up here and say, oh, VPNs are bad. That's actually my next slide. I think we all know VPNs are, they're 20-something years old now, and we need a better way to do it. So when we say Zero Trust Access, we're talking more instead of, connecting a user to a network, like a VPN, connecting a verified identity to a specific asset, device, server, what have you. So instead of doing, again, broad access, very narrow application specific. We also start to build on this with identity security. We all know identity is a new perimeter. So how are we making sure this user is who they say they are? How are we making sure that their device is theirs and that's up to date? And then lastly, we build on the privileged access pieces, which, yes, the traditional credential vaulting, rotation, injection, great. But how do we start to monitor and audit these sessions with session recording, with just-in-time access? So all of this is consolidated into PAM. This is the Ciolo platform. I'm not going to do too much Ciolo speak today. But these are the 3 key pillars. And usually when we start talking to customers, because 9 times out of 10, again, we're coming in to replace a VPN, or we just know access is a problem, usually for third parties coming in. Has anybody underdone a VPN project where you completely wipe it, start something new? It's a lot. It's more network architecture. You might need new, hardware to support this. You need to push out an agent to everybody's machine. Then you have to deal with. I worked at Cisco. I can, bash AnyConnect as much as I can. You have to deal with that day in and day out. And ultimately, it's been kind of, the products itself that make these rollouts really hard. A lot of our traditional PAM customers that we talk to, they never fully deploy. 3 years down the line, 30, 40% deployment, you're not as secure as you think you are. So being able to consolidate all of these into one stack is really, one platform, is really what's enabled our customers to get off the ground quickly. And we'll kind of talk about, some timelines here. Now, don't want to spend too much time on this because we all know VPN bad. But ultimately, legacy access methods are starting to break operations. And this is really, Ciolo we're focused on the OT and the ICS and CPS, whatever other acronym, side of the house, but we also play in the IT side. But ultimately, we're seeing, third-party contractors coming in and they're not supervised. We don't know what they're actually doing within the network. They make a bad change, they fat finger something. We have no idea what happened because they came in just on the VPN. I don't know. These flat VPN tunnels create a lot of overreach. This is the kind of lateral movement problem. And yes, there are ways to secure lateral movement. But with a VPN, you're going out, you're buying NAC, you're buying some other solution. You keep having to buy all these little Band-Aids just to throw on top. That creates a lot of friction. More agents, more complicated deployments, more hardware, more watering and feeding. This all slows down operations. In OT, the number one thing that we care about is safety. We have to keep people safe who are on the floor. We're dealing with things that go boom or could crush you in just a matter of seconds. So the faster that we can get people in frictionless, the better. We also see identity silos, and this is really common, especially in OT, where we might have 30, 40, 50 different sites that each have their own domain attached. Now all of my users have 3 to 4 different credentials to manage. Guess what? They're going to use the same password for every single one. And there's really no one center of truth for our users' identities. And again, that is our new perimeter. We have to know that these people are who they say they are when they're accessing my equipment. And lastly, we see a lot of fragile dependencies. OT is very, very, it's tough. Just from, it's a very tough industry, special requirements. But the current kind of tool and vendor selection is very focused on cloud-only models and very heavy architectures. Bring me 6 fully licensed Windows servers to go run this, and by the way, you actually need that at every single facility. I'm spending more on VMs than I am on the actual software. And these cloud-only models, again, work great for IT, where we can just let everything out or everything in, totally fine, I really don't care. In OT, we have to be very, very careful on what we're allowing in and out, and based on my requirements, I might not even be able to talk out to the internet, connect to a vendor cloud. So all of these have kind of correlated to a broken access methodology where people are using 4 to 5 different systems to get in. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and start talking about a few of our customers here. And again, some of these might start to resonate with you, might be really similar, but these are just some really good accomplishments here. So we're working, I'm happy to share names at our booth if you come talk. So we're talking with a company out here in Oklahoma, operate tons of pipelines, 1,200 plus sites, most of them unmanned rigs. They have over 1,000 external vendors, meaning they are not an employee, they are not badged, they're a support contract, whatever, along with 2,000 plus users, internal users, badged employees. And their biggest challenge was they have acquired multiple companies over the years. This ended up creating 5 completely separate environments. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate networks. And what they actually decided, because of how they took TSA regulations, was they actually implemented a machine per environment requirement. So to access any one of those environments, you needed a special machine that was joined to that domain, had that certificate on there, different set of credentials for the user. We're having a light show. This is kind of cool. And ultimately, this led to, I'm not kidding, every single person carrying around 5 laptops, 3 different bags, just walking around. And they thought that this was normal. This is fine. This also led to, because we have all of these different environments, there was no consistency. I can't just, again, this isn't just as simple as IT where I can just, push a button and everything is the same because it's all in my little cloud. There were some sites that didn't have firewalls at all. Just pure your, ISP modem with some consumer router. There you go. That's fine. Completely flat networks, no real identity source at all local accounts floating around. Everybody knew the credentials. This led to a huge amount of management overhead. Can you imagine having to, for every user that you're onboarding, actually then have to go provision 4 more laptops for them, 4 more VPN accounts, 4 more everything for an IT team of about 300 people? Absolutely insane. This was delaying critical OT projects because now I have to go to IT, request all these things. There's always that little, fighting, I guess I should say. So projects were being delayed. Users hated this. I hate using 1 laptop half the time. If you gave me 5, no, I wouldn't know what to do. So ultimately, if users don't like security or they find it obtrusive, we are all going to find a way around it. And lastly, because every single site was so inconsistent, there was no centralized auditing, logging, anything of that nature. So just no visibility, just 5 completely random environments doing whatever they want. So the kind of, where CLO comes into this and really, what the core requirements are here, and kind of being as agnostic as possible. The 5 laptop solution, even common 2 laptops, the way to get around this is prioritizing agentless first solutions, meaning I only need to use my web browser to get to every single environment. Ultimately, the device you're coming from really doesn't matter because we're going to verify your identity when you're logging in. We can query and posture your device if you want to, but ultimately, I don't care what device you're coming in from. The other piece to this is, well, at least on the agentless piece, what we did here was full RDP, SSH, VNC, web application access. This was to a myriad of different, resources. It was engineering workstations, HMIs. We even did some direct thick client connections as well. And this is the kind of next part here where we're actually able to support thick clients agentlessly as well. And this is really common. Third party coming in, they have their own proprietary software, they're connecting in. You can't manage it in any way. You can't install an agent on their machine. We have ways around that so that we're not, messing up with our third party too much. And the other piece here was all of these 5 different environments, they could not, they could not mingle in the middle. This wasn't like we couldn't just bring in like a SASE solution and connect everything into a little transit network. That wasn't going to fly. Each environment had to stay logically and physically separated. And this is where that kind of cloud dependence piece really hits because CLO is an on-prem first solution so that we actually don't need an internet connection to operate. We can run completely air-gapped. I know there's a lot of opinions around that word, but quote unquote, we can run air-gapped. No external connections. We can function fully on-prem for our local users as well. And this is what allowed us to keep every single environment separate. Each one was stood up as its own tenant. And while currently these users still have 5 credentials for every single one that they're logging into, they only have 1 machine. And that's actually the really, kind of when we get into the outcomes here, we were able to reduce endpoint costs per employee by about $8,000 because each laptop was $1,500, $2,000. So huge cost savings just in that by just pushing everybody to one web UI. We are able to meet TSA regulations and just general corporate policy by deploying offline, no outside connections, and only allowing connections from company-owned endpoints and networks. And this is a really unique one because, again, I've said this a few times now, we're typically doing a full VPN replacement. This is actually a case where we played nicely with a VPN. Again, it's you tell anybody, yeah, I'm ripping out your VPN, panic. What we said was, no, you can keep using that while you start to transition users over. So that's how we're keeping the kind of, network requirement. Not very zero trust, I will admit, but ultimately, we were able to meet this solution here, requirement, I should say. Again, every environment was able to stay isolated, no connection out, and we were able to get our external users in. Again, this used to be a 2-week-long process. Now we reduced that to just 10 minutes. So a lot of operational efficiency, and that right there is really what I get at, because everybody here, yes, we're more secure. We can help you, meet all these compliance requirements, meet all this security stuff. But ultimately, it's the operational impacts that really drive a project's success. So, just the stats here alone, the huge cost savings, the time reduction to get users in, huge success story here. And again, we deployed across 1,200 sites in under 6 months. So, and we'll talk about why we can do that here in a second. So now kind of shifting gears, this is a customer very near and dear to my heart in the waste management recycling space. They're the ones with the big green dumpsters. That should be pretty obvious. They run 800 sites globally across primarily Canada and North America. Over 300 external vendors, over 1,000 internal users. And this was, I'll say this as professionally as I can, a really big cluster when we came into this, because similar to our previous one here, M&As kind of resulted in just this mess. Again, we had sites that didn't have firewalls, and the management of security and technology was actually pushed to local on-site plant personnel. Not central IT, local staff were actually making all of those decisions. This was a huge headache because, again, took way too long to get users actually onboarded into the platform, and there were a lot of contractual differences that we noticed too, and this is a kind of interesting point. Every site had local contacts. There was no corporate kind of support contract with, like a bailiwick or something like that. Every site had their own little people that they worked with. So vendor A is over here using TeamViewer at this site. Vendor B is now using LogMeIn, God forbid. Then we have one site that randomly bought some firewall off of eBay. I'm not kidding. And there was literally just no way to know what was going on at any time. The other part to this was every kind of group within this company operates as its own entity, and they also have their own decisions to make. So this is a really unique case, probably one of our largest deployments to date, and actually one of our more complex ones. And what we're able to kind of solve for here was allow every single site to operate independently. Instead of kind of typical IT solutions where, again, everything falls into the same bucket and we treat everything the same, we have to recognize in OT that every single site is very unique. So we have a capability to where, again, they want local admins and local site facility or faculty to make their own decisions. We allowed that. We gave them, hey, here's your own tenant, your own UI, do whatever you want, add your own users, you're great. Again, local staff have access, but now corporate IT still has oversight. This kind of becomes a primary subtenant architecture, and from here, corporate IT can still say, no, you need this baseline policy, you need this baseline posture check, but every single site can still do what they need to do to get their job done. And again, logging, we can centralize all of our logging from every single site all into one place. And we had multiple identity providers. Of a couple of sites with this customer, they had larger support contracts. And what we're actually able to do is do direct B2B directory trusts with these larger vendors. So that now all of these users are, quote unquote, authorized to gain access. We have some policy to make sure we know when they're coming in and all of that good stuff. But ultimately, because we can integrate with any identity provider in any kind of multitude, 5, 10, 20, 50, whatever, we can create and orchestrate that single source of truth for who our users actually are. And what did all this result in? So the onboarding process, we were able to reduce that by 10 full business days. And because we don't have to push out an agent, that saved about another week alone just in troubleshooting. I will admit this customer had some very special vendors that they were working with, a lot of layer 8 issues, but ultimately lots of time saved, just 15 days back, just trying to get somebody into an environment. And because of this unique kind of primary subtenant architecture, each site now has its own unique microperimeter. So now we have MFA, single sign-on, we have that ZTNA capabilities, the session recording, the just-in-time access, all of that good stuff in front of these legacy sites. Windows 98 doesn't know what MFA is. So when we can become that front door and start putting all these security policies, up before we even get there, the better. No dependence on the existing network. We essentially sit on top. This is a big difference with VPNs too. You don't have to go in and carve out new space, anything like that. Again, Central IT can now push all of our policies down. And we have been, this is still an ongoing deployment, but we are actually able to deploy 10 sites a week. We now have this down to, plug in the hardware, run the script, and now we can go push out all of these deployments. And this is also enabling this company. I believe that they've acquired at least one company since we've started. They can now execute these activities a lot easier. I'm not having to manually merge directories. I'm not having to stand up new MPLS tunnels or SD-WAN or something so companies can start communicating. Just need to drop our appliance in there and you're fine. Awesome. Now, last one, we're going to hop over the pond a little bit here and talk about a power generation company out in the UK, a little bit smaller, but still, these are things that can actually really go boom. About 10 sites, 200 vendors, about 100 external or internal users right here. And we needed a solution that could meet the NIS and the CAF framework. And there was no granular access for external or internal users. This is the VPN problem. User to network. If it's on the network, no other controls, I can likely get to it. There is no MFA in place. It's 2025. MFA should be in front of everything, but we still didn't have that. Or that there's no IDP federation as well. So again, everything is just operating out in the ether with no actual correlation to what's going on. And we had really, really small OT teams, and this is really common. OT teams are getting slashed or they're getting absorbed into IT, and so a solution needed to be deployed that had really, really low overhead and didn't need constant, watering and feeding to maintain everything. So, where we are able to bring some success here. So again, we utilize this same multi-tenant architecture, so that local sites still had local control, and we still had actually a kind of disconnected crown jewel tenant as well that you need like 6 different hops to actually get into. It goes against everything that we usually preach, but again, we have that kind of separate break glass environment if somebody needed to get in. This also introduced no restrictions on deployment methods. So because of most power regulations, NERC-CIP as well, there's no outside connections allowed. We couldn't go talk out to the internet, so we kept everything completely offline for all of our on-site users. And we finally got to a security baseline. This is what we all should be trying to get to, of now all of my sites are at least, have the same tool. I can start to push out, some of these base policies. Now I have a good starting point to keep innovating on top of this and making it better. And the other piece here that's missing with legacy access solutions is, oversight controls. Again, somebody connects to a VPN, you might get something in your SIM, user connected. Great, user went here, great. What did they do? They went here, I don't know what they did. So being able to actually take a video transcript of that session for all of our third parties coming in is huge. I can go exactly see where you clicked, what you typed in. I can even search, who ran RMRF star, for our SSH session. So this oversight is really big, and lots of cool features there. Come talk to me at the booth to learn more about some of our session recording features. But this was big because now something messes up, I can go back and look at the recording and see what happened, and I can go fix it. Or if it was a breach, I can see what happened. Same thing. And we're also able to put this supervised access kind of barrier up in front of all of our third parties. Because today, a third party comes in on a VPN or a VDI, you probably don't get a notification. They just connect in whenever they want. So being able to say, no, I actually need to approve your connection in real time, so I know you're on the floor, and I can tell you if you can't do that, is really big. And then the other piece of this is, admins can now actually shadow and interact with those sessions. So now it's no longer just a black hole of users coming in. I can actually see what they're doing. I can go in, help them out. I can kill that session whenever I need to. And our outcomes here, so really increase just the visibility of the control over who's connecting, what my users are actually doing when they're in these sessions. Actually, kind of funny little tangent here. We had a customer a while back, and session recording is actually big to them because one of their contractors, he ended up billing, I think for the entire year, about $430,000 worth of overtime, more than their CISO. And he was just sitting in some office playing video games the entire time, just toggling, every few hours he'd just reconnect to the VPN, just to make it look like, oh, he was actually doing something. Now with something like this, I can actually call BS because I know what you're doing, or I have to know when you actually connect. So kind of funny tangent, but again, really shows the power of some of these features here. Again, centralize all of our identity capabilities. We got MFA in front of our legacy applications. Big. Everybody needs this now, especially for your cyber insurance policies. Central IT is able to push policies and baselines, and now we've met all of our compliance and audit. So all of that kind of being said here, I do kind of want to just take 2 seconds and kind of talk about, the architecture that makes this possible. Again, stop by our booth. We can get into this, in really get a little more detail, But really the core of this is we brought the control, data, and management plane all on-prem. That's this little IDAC that you see right here. That is the entire platform, and this sits really close to our assets. This is actually deployed, typically in every single site. So we sit really close to the applications. We're able to form native protocol connections to wherever we're going, our normal, RDP, SSH web, all that good stuff, but we can even start doing Modbus, OPC UA, we can do RS Logics, TIA, so a lot of unique OT-specific protocols. This is also the UI to the platform. Cielo doesn't even host that. It's local to your environment. This is also why I hate saying zero trust, because a lot of vendors require you to trust them with a lot of data. You have to stand up GRE tunnels. You have to let them decrypt your traffic. And what happens when they get breached? Right? What happens if they have somebody sitting on their network sniffing all of this unencrypted traffic as it passes? That's why we created Cielo. This little IDAC stores all customer-specific information, and because of our SNI routing mechanism, we don't have to decrypt in the middle. So from the end user's endpoint all the way to this little IDAC right here, we maintain full end-to-end encryption. Even if you use our very optional cloud component, we don't break that in our cloud. And this little private gateway that you see up here in the DMZ, this is what allows us to solve for that offline use case. That's exactly what we run up in our cloud. So you can use both. You can just use our cloud. You can just use a private gateway. Lots of ways to skin the cat. Again, come stop by and we can talk more about it. And we are not hardware based. Everything's software. These are Docker containers. So super lightweight. IDAC on a Raspberry Pi can do 500 concurrent RDP connections. So don't need really expensive hardware to go, you don't need 6, 7 Windows VMs, anything like that. So because we're really lightweight, allows us to deploy really quickly, and that's how you can start to realize value a lot faster. All right, so ultimately, when we start talking, again, we all know that we need better access from a security standpoint, we get that, but what gets the business exciting is how we can enable operations. And first, by only allowing our internal users, our external users to only see what they should have access to, principle of least privilege. I'm not going to see 50 different icons in my web UI if I only need access to one. So instead of VPN, broad access, very narrow, pinpointed, specific access. Identity-bound connections. So again, we know who our user is. We verify that they are who they say they are with MFA. We know they're coming from the right device. We're not doing this just based on a static tunnel, right? We're not doing this, just because I logged in at this point. Everything is tied back to my actual user and other contexts, again, like my device, location, even time of day. Being able to break down identity silos and bring everything together is huge. Identity is a really expensive project to take on as well. So the more that we can, even keep everything, if I have 5 ADs, it's working great. I'm not going to, tell you to go buy expensive Okta. I'm going to tell you to keep using those. But now we can start to orchestrate all of these together without a lot of extra lift. And again, we run completely locally. This is huge. Secure access without internet or any external connectivity. So we can be a fully remote solution. We can operate fully on-prem if you want. But again, this is what really allows us to play in multiple environments, even within the same customer, to really meet whatever needs that we have. So with that being said, I know I have about 10 minutes left. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take a few. Any other kind of deep technical questions, we can handle at the booth. But any questions right now? Yes?
Do you integrate with any SIM products?
Yes, we do. So we just speak syslog at the end of the day, so we can talk to anybody.
Testing, sorry. Just raise your hand, I'll bring the mic to you if you want to ask a question. Can I start with a question? That first case study said that each individual is using 1 to 5 different notebook computers?
Yes.
How many people in the audience are currently using more than 2 notebook computers? 3 notebook computers? 4, anybody? 2, 3, or 4. You want to just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and this really came from, and this kind of the funny part, we all have to follow, these regulations and compliance, but we can all take it a little bit differently. So it basically just came from, if we want this to be the most granular, the most secure, let's just do a complete machine for each one. It can be completely re-imaged, have its own special stuff, completely clean for every single environment, different cert for every environment, different set of credentials, different even tools for every single one. It was a complete nightmare. And even these people are also all traveling. So now you have, what am I going to do with 4 backpacks on a flight? And so it was just a huge headache. And then, we have some of the other side where now we have to worry about the refresh for this. How are we replacing these, every 3 years? How are we getting these back from users? And there were cases too where you have to ship one in for service, you're out. You can't work on that environment until it's back. And then again, just the hard cost savings alone, close to basically $10,000 per employee just for laptops, which was insane. Multiply that by about 250.
Is there any business case for companies to have a single individual using multiple notebook computers?
Genuinely, I could see a max of 2. That is where I could see it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we don't really need to care what device you're coming in from. There are cases where, yes, we might want to actually posture the device. That's up to everybody's, personal discretion. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I know who you are. You verify your identity. I know all this other context around you. And, you're coming in over an encrypted web tunnel, to us. Nothing really is going to happen. I know that's scary to say. There's always a possibility, but ultimately, the device that you're coming in from really shouldn't matter. I should just be able to go to my web browser, do everything through there, have my security applied at that level, and then be good.
Anyone have any questions? Throw a curveball. You guys have questions. I know you do. Anybody have a curveball?
So I noticed on your architecture diagram, you didn't show a 2.5. For those sites that have a 2.5 implemented, can you stack your gateway and have gateway to gateway?
Yes, absolutely. And we just launched a new appliance as well. It's a very lightweight IDAC, essentially. It's like a remote interface, if you want to think about it that way. But yes, we can absolutely do a stacked, if you want to go even all the way to, zone 1 or zone 0. Not that there's much user interactivity there, but if you want to start getting data out or anything like that, yes, we can start to stack that into each kind of Purdue zone. So we can make sure, hey, you're only going up, one at a time, or we do have some folks who are a little more lenient. They'll just do a pipe, all the way up. So a few different ways. But yes, we can absolutely go lower.
Don't feel bashful. Just raise your hand. I'll come to you. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So one of your use cases was a large company, several hundred locations. Sometimes that can feel like a never-ending endeavor, but it sounded like it wasn't. It was finite with you.
Yes. And this is, most of the time we're not fighting, technical dependencies or anything like that. It's this concept or this notion that this has to be a really hard process because it used to be. I was at Cisco, I was part of Cisco, and then I was at Duo, and part of that was, I'm not kidding, I think it was like 3 months. Cisco said, no more AnyConnect for anybody, now everybody's going through Duo. That was terrifying, even just from an employee standpoint, because I'm like, I don't know where I need to go anymore. But no, there is this concept that, it's impossible. But because you don't have to re-architect the network, we act as that abstraction layer almost. You just have to deploy us in every site. It just becomes, then how quickly can I ship out and, turn on hardware, or how quickly can I ship out a VM to a site? That's really, all it comes down to. I don't care what your networking, scheme is. I don't care what firewalls you have. I don't care about any of that because we just sit on top. So even, a 1,200 site deployment becomes very manageable. And we also have a great customer success team to help people out with that.
So with the file transfers, are you guys scanning the files for malware and viruses and that kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. Either our file sharing mechanism. We also do this with like SMB shares. But yes, we do or malware scanning when that gets sent. And you can either use our service or you can bring us a local ICAP server if you want.
I've got one more question for you.
Yes.
Is there a trigger event that really pushes it over needing to implement these solutions?
Yes, and unfortunately, it is usually some type of security incident. Give you an example, another oil and gas company we're working with, one of their contractors went out to a site, and he just thought, oh, well, I need help from HQ. I need to get somebody in. So he's sitting at a switch that he's plugged into. He just plugs in a random LTE modem into the actual rig network, and then just starts screen sharing over Zoom and doing all of this stuff. And then quickly, everything, we started seeing random connections coming into the rig from, locations we had no idea about. And so they had to shut that down really quick. This was just, basically a completely random user to them. So it usually is an incident. Another, example was one of our big customers. They make a lot of tape. That should clue you in. They actually almost had a safety incident because engineer remoted in, fat fingered the IP address. We've all done it. And instead of hitting a production line that was down, he hit one that was up and triggered basically a 4-ton roll of material to come flying off the line. So it's incidents like that that usually start to say, that's the oh shit moment. I don't know if I can swear. Where people will say we have to start putting controls up in place. So it usually, unfortunately, is some type of incident, but that's usually the catalyst. Or it's you're breaking my back because I have 5 laptops I have to carry.
We have
Awesome.
2 more minutes for 2 more outstanding questions.
I think we're good.
I think you did a great job.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.